Cowboys Nation, this week started with that kind of energy where everything feels slightly off schedule. The players are still shaking off the hits from a long Monday night, and suddenly every little detail becomes a talking point. And of course, the center of the conversation ends up being the quarterback. Right out of the gate, the coaching staff made sure everyone knew Dak Prescott would be appearing on the injury report with a hip issue. They tried to calm the waters by saying it was nothing alarming, just soreness from physical game, the sort of thing that usually fades as the week goes on. Even so, anytime Dak's name pops up next to the word injury, people take notice because his history has taught everyone to do exactly that. The staff had originally hinted that he would go through a full workload in practice, but when the actual session wrapped, the truth was that he was limited. Not shut down, not pulled aside in the middle of drills, just limited. But that small difference matters in a league where injury reporting is taken seriously, and where every clue becomes part of the larger puzzle that fans and analysts obsess over. Coming off a Monday game, limited practice on Wednesday usually signals that the player is still on track to suit up. But it also opens the door for conversations the team probably hoped to avoid. Nothing about this situation feels catastrophic, yet it does carry a weight because of what Prescott has dealt with in previous years. The ankle that kept him out, the calf strain that lingered longer than expected, and those smaller nagging problems that never fully disappear once a quarterback reaches a certain stage of his career. None of those issues were predictable. None were the result of poor conditioning, but they left a mark. And that is why even the smallest piece of injury news involving him feels a little louder than it might for other players. Even though he finished the entire game without showing any visible limitation, and even though the coaches insisted the soreness was simply part of the aftermath of a physical matchup, the fact remains that he is on the report. That alone sends fans into that familiar swirl of curiosity and concern. The expectation is that he plays, and in reality, the odds of him missing a rivalry game of this magnitude are extremely slim. You see teams around the league handle their star quarterbacks the same way, giving them a lighter Wednesday to help the body reset. But until the Cowboys roll out the final injury designations at the end of the week, people will continue watching closely. The bigger question isn't whether he plays, but how close to 100% he will be. A quarterback can be 90% healthy and still perform extremely well, but against a tough opponent in a short week, every percentage point matters. The Cowboys are dealing with a compact schedule that forces them to play Sunday and then again the following Thursday, a stretch that tests the depth and conditioning of every roster. That makes the quarterback's health even more important, especially when the offense leans heavily on his ability to extend plays and maintain rhythm. What adds another layer to all of this is how the rest of the injury report looks. Several starters and key rotational players were either limited or being monitored closely, including veterans who are dealing with chronic soreness and younger players fighting through their first full year of NFL wear and tear. Some names appeared for the first time this season. Others have been recurring entries for weeks. It becomes a delicate juggling act for the coaching staff, balancing recovery with preparation, trying to avoid overworking anyone while still preparing for a divisional showdown that could define the next stretch of the season. Among the more encouraging signs was seeing certain defensive linemen trending in the right direction, particularly those who missed recent action. A limited designation for some of them signals progress, the type that suggests they may be available for the upcoming game if their bodies respond well to the next practice. The difference between having those rotational pieces available and not having them can be enormous in matchups where pressure and gap control become deciding factors. At the same time, the team has players who are practically guaranteed to appear on every report all season long because they've been managing the same lingering issues for weeks. Offensive linemen especially fall into that category. Guys who take constant contact and deal with swelling or discomfort that never fully disappears until the offseason arrives. In some cases, it is almost expected that they will need a cleanup procedure once everything is over. They know it, the trainers know it, and yet they suit up every week to keep the unit functioning at full strength. There is also movement around the roster that flew under the radar, but still carried implications, including one linebacker being claimed by another team. For the Cowboys, it ended up providing some unexpected financial relief, and for the player, it created a fresh opportunity on a different roster. Sometimes moves like that are as much about timing and circumstance as they are about performance, especially when multiple coaching staffs have evaluated a player the same way over time. A change of scenery can rekindle a career, and at the same time, it can help a team clean up its cap situation heading into the final stretch of the season. All of this is happening while fans shift their attention toward the next matchup against Philadelphia, a rivalry game that always brings out extra intensity. Predictions are already flying around. Debates are surfacing across social media, and everyone wants to know whether this Cowboys team will show up with enough health, energy, and execution to keep pace with one of the strongest opponents on the schedule. The injuries may not be severe, but they create just enough uncertainty to spark conversation and keep everyone on edge heading into the end of the week. As the week rolls on, the atmosphere around the facility begins shifting from cautious observation to focused preparation, and the players start locking into that mindset where every detail matters. You can feel the urgency building, especially knowing that this matchup isn't just another date on the calendar. When the Cowboys and the Eagles meet, the tone automatically changes. Every practice rep feels heavier. Every film session gets a bit more intense, and even the veterans who have lived through this rivalry for years admit there is something different in the air. In the middle of all that, the team keeps circling back to the health of the roster, because one or two bodies not being fully ready can completely change the rhythm of a game like this. Dak Prescott continues to draw most of the attention, and the coaching staff keeps walking that fine line between transparency and not fueling unnecessary panic. They want to protect him, but they also want to keep him sharp. So the plan becomes dialing his workload up or down, depending on how he responds each day. Some fans expect him to be full speed immediately, while others assume the worst every time he appears on the report. The truth is usually somewhere in between, where soreness is legitimate but manageable, and the training staff has ways to navigate these small setbacks without impacting game availability. Still, the slightest hitch in his movement or the smallest delay in a drop back during practice becomes a magnet for speculation, especially with cameras always around. Other players are dealing with their own issues, and the team must juggle those concerns as well. The defensive front is a major focus, with the coaching staff keeping their eyes on how the linemen handle the workload as the week progresses. Some of them, especially the ones returning from recent injuries, need to be eased in so they do not push too hard too quickly. It is a delicate balance, because their presence is crucial for generating pressure and stopping the run. In a game where every inch of the field can turn into a battle, having those big bodies fresh and available becomes one of the team's highest priorities. The secondary is another group being watched closely. Safeties dealing with nagging issues need careful monitoring, and the coaches are trying to avoid overworking anyone who has already faced multiple knocks this season. Managing soft tissue concerns becomes a weekly ritual in the league, and the Cowboys have to make sure they do not push anyone into a setback that could have been prevented with one more day of rest. At the same time, the younger players who were forced into action earlier in the year have gained confidence and continue sharpening their instincts in case they are called upon again. The rotation might look different every week, but the coaching staff seems committed to keeping everyone engaged and ready. On the offensive line, the situation remains as complicated as ever. Several starters are dealing with issues that clear up slightly, then return, then fade again, creating a cycle that never fully stabilizes. In particular, the interior linemen are absorbing constant contact, and you can see the toll it takes by mid-season. The staff knows the group needs to stay intact to give Prescott the protection he relies on, but they also know forcing someone to push through too much discomfort can backfire. That is why every report mentioning a limited lineman sparks curiosity, even if the coaches insist the workload adjustments are precautionary. The rhythm of the offense depends heavily on the chemistry of that unit, and slight changes can ripple into bigger issues if not managed carefully. Meanwhile, the locker room begins to shift into its rivalry mentality. The veterans who have experienced these matchups many times start sharing stories with the younger players, painting a clear picture of what to expect. They explain that the energy will feel different from the very first snap, that the crowd noise will be relentless, and that every mistake could swing momentum in a way that becomes hard to recover from. They remind everyone that rivalry games often come down to discipline, physicality, and the ability to keep composure when emotions rise. Even with injuries being monitored and workloads adjusted, the team understands that mental preparation becomes just as important as physical readiness. Across the hallway, the coaches review film with a level of precision that borders on obsessive. They know exactly what Philadelphia likes to do, where their strengths lie, and which tendencies they rely on in crucial situations. They also understand that this opponent thrives on forcing teams into uncomfortable positions. That means the Cowboys cannot rely solely on talent or athleticism. They need execution, communication, and a full roster playing at a high level. That is why those small injury designations matter so much. A slightly limited pass rusher or a lineman playing through soreness could create the tiny cracks the opponent needs to take advantage. The team also continues adjusting the game plan around different players' availability. If a defensive lineman shows progress during the second half of the week, the staff can be more aggressive with the rotation. If a safety needs an extra day, they modify coverage packages. If the quarterback's movement is still limited, they tweak certain elements of the offense to emphasize quicker reads and easier throwing windows. It becomes a chess match inside the building long before the actual game begins, and every hour brings a new adjustment based on how each player responds to treatment and practice. On the sidelines during practice, you can see the trainers working overtime. They deal with stretching routines, mobility exercises, and treatment plans designed specifically for each player's situation. Cold tubs, compression sleeves, and band work become part of the daily cycle, and players move from one station to another trying to keep their bodies in peak condition. For some veterans, this is practically a science at this point. They know what they need, when they need it, and how their bodies respond. Younger players, on the other hand, often learn through trial and error until they figure out what works best during the grind of an NFL season. As for the fans, the anticipation continues building, amplified by every small detail that trickles out of practice. Debates fill comment sections as people discuss whether Prescott's soreness will impact his mobility, whether the defensive line will be fully intact, whether the secondary can hold up, and whether the offensive line's health will allow the offense to find rhythm early. Some lean toward optimism, pointing out that limited practices are common after a Monday game. Others take a more cautious approach, knowing how unpredictable injuries can be and how quickly momentum shifts in a rivalry matchup. All the while, the players do their best to block out the noise and focus on the task ahead. The week becomes a blend of rest, preparation, evaluation, and adjustment. Each day brings more clarity about who will suit up, how much they will play, and how the team needs to approach the game plan to compensate for anyone who is less than perfect physically. Every rep matters, every correction matters, and every sign of progress becomes a quiet confidence boost for the group. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are swirling across the NFL world, and this one is causing jaws to drop. Travis Kelce, the tight end who has been the heartbeat of Patrick Mahomes' offense for years, is allegedly abandoning his quarterback and setting his sights on a completely new mission, acting as a luxury security presence for the Cowboys in the red zone. Sources close to the league hint that Kelce, long celebrated for his catching prowess and sideline chemistry with Mahomes, might be exploring uncharted territory, trading his iconic Chiefs jersey for something a little more defensive, yet surprisingly flashy. The rumor mill suggests that Kelce has been spotted in Cowboys gear, blending into the team's high-octane offense in ways that are raising eyebrows. Could this be a tactical masterstroke, or just a celebrity-style cameo with a twist? Insiders speculate that Kelce's reported red zone security role isn't about conventional defense. It's about presence, intimidation, and perhaps a dash of showmanship that could tilt the psychological scales. Imagine the tight end who once torched a fence is now standing like a wall, a human luxury barrier in the crucial scoring zone, daring anyone to challenge the Cowboys' advances. Fans on social media are exploding with takes, memes, and heated debates. Some wonder if Kelce's apparent pivot signals the end of an era with Mahomes, while others are convinced this is the NFL's most audacious stunt yet. Analysts are speculating about what this means for the Chiefs' playbook, questioning how Mahomes will adjust without his favorite target. Meanwhile, the Cowboys' locker room is reportedly buzzing, with veterans allegedly welcoming Kelce with open arms, or at least curious stares, unsure if they've gained a superstar teammate or inherited a high-profile enforcer with a flair for the dramatic. The whole scenario reads like a Hollywood script. One of the league's most dominant offensive threats, seemingly trading touchdowns for intimidation tactics, all under the bright lights of one of the NFL's fiercest rivalries. Rumors continue to swirl, and every source seems to add a new twist. Some claim Kelce is negotiating contracts with cowboy boots and a penchant for theatrics. Others whisper about secret training sessions designed to merge star power with red zone dominance. The NFL universe is left to speculate. Is this a bold strategic innovation, a playful publicity stunt, or a genuine shakeup that could redefine Kelce's career? Only time and the next red zone will tell. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.